Hello class, this is your teacher Mr. McDougall with your next project tutorial. We are in our photography unit. We've been talking about exposure and other ways to make sure we take a correct photo. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into not only making sure the photo is exposed and viewable, not too bright, not too dark, but we also want to talk about composition. Composition means how do you arrange your shot? It's basically a culmination of everything that goes into your shot. How do you set up your lighting? How do you decide what subjects to put and where to place them and how much to show? It kind of means everything that goes into your shot, but roughly it also just means where do you place the objects in your shot? The goal is to make your photo as interesting and engaging as possible to your viewer. If you're scrolling through photos on social media, what makes you actually stop and stare at a photo that seems interesting to you as opposed to just scrolling past it? We need to make sure we follow certain rules. Our brains are easily manipulated into liking certain things, and that's where these rules of composition come into play, where you don't even know that your eye is being guided across a photo. So we're going to talk about those right now. So let me show you what I mean. Briefly go over this and I'll explain your guys' assignment. So again, we're talking about composition. So that we're going to talk about composition techniques, and then I'm going to let you guys start practicing them at the end. First off, we're going to talk about filling the frame. So of these two sets of images, there's a set right here on the left and a set on the right. Think about which one is more interesting. Take a second and just think about which one of these, left or right side, is more engaging in the shot. This is called filling the frame, and the goal is to not leave a lot of headroom in your shot. So if you said the right side was more interesting, you're correct, because this is what we call headroom, the negative space away from the subject. So we do use negative space. Negative space is not in itself a bad thing, but if you use it to where it's kind of distracting, your eye doesn't know really where to look. Do you focus here? Do you focus there? It's kind of off center. He's looking into nothing right here, and this is a bunch of useless space that's not interesting. You want to fill the frame with your subject. You want your subject to not have a lot of headroom. You want their heads near the top of the shot almost every time. This makes it more engaging. It has us look kind of right at their eye line, like you're looking at a person as you would normally talk to them. So again, filling the frame. Don't leave your subject in the corners that's distracting, where we have all this empty space and our eyes don't really know where to look. Our eyes go straight to the subject on this one. So that's the first key issue, is to fill the frame with your subject. The next one we're going to talk about is leading lines. So this one is where your eye is guided by a path in the image. So when you look at these next two images, you'll notice there's some kind of path or pattern that directly guides your eye. You can see in this one, it's being guided by these fences right towards the subject. And this one we have these leading lines, or this pattern, straight towards our main focus over here of the groom. There's lines that are created within the shot that, again, guide your eye. And back to the previous example, this one does have a lot of negative space. You can see they're the subject of the shot, but there's a lot of negative space here, but it's not being wasted. It's actually used to center them. Again, the negative space is guiding your eye right towards here. It's keeping them in the focus. Plus, it's showing off the scenery. The scenery is part of the shot. So, as I mentioned, negative space is not really a bad thing. You just need to use it properly. The next one's called the rule of thirds, and it's called the rule of thirds because it's a 3x3 grid. Think of it like a tic-tac-toe grid that guides the points of interest. So you want to line up your shots on those points of interest. So you can see these shots, the subjects are more off to the side because that's following the rule of thirds. The rule of thirds is this grid right here. And your cameras have now been set to show this grid on your display so you can help line up your shots. You want to keep the focal points of the shot near these intersecting points right here. It doesn't mean it has to be right on the intersecting point or right on the line, but you want it to be near that area, so close by. So again, these subjects, they're different heights, so I can't put them both right in the middle, but they're in this general area right here. Same with this lovely couple right here. They're in this general area of this intersection. That's where you want to keep them. On one of these four corners is where you want to put your subjects to make them most interesting. And you can see I'm filling the frame by keeping their heads near the top. A little bit of headroom is okay, but you don't want too much. We're going to keep talking about the rule of thirds. It's also good for landscape photos. When you see landscape photos, they tend to be more engaging because they line up with those lines right here. So if I put the rule of thirds back on it, you'll see the horizon line, which is this line where your vision ends, usually at the end of a field or the end of the ocean or something. That's the horizon line. It lines up with either the lower or the upper third line. And again, it's in that zone, making it more engaging. So keep that in mind when you're taking your landscape photos. The next thing you could do with the rule of thirds is to use multiple subjects on different intersecting points to increase engagement and balance in the photo. So instead of just having one on one side like the previous example, you can use multiple subjects and multiple points of interest. So again, if I put the grid over them, you can see right here, here's her face, and I also have her new husband right here. Same thing right here. Their faces or parts of their head are near these intersection. I even create balance at opposing points on this one. You can see it's her face right here, and then her hand placement where her flowers and everything is on this opposing corner. So again, having multiple intersecting points of interest will create more balance and more engagement, will allow the viewer to continually look around the image and increase your audience engagement. And companies know this when they design their logos. They do that on purpose. They're very aware that our brains are easily manipulated to enjoy the rule of thirds. And again, we're not doing it subconsciously. It's just the way we've always seen photos growing up. We understand that the rule of thirds is pleasing to our brains. Our eyes enjoy it. So when we see that, we are drawn to it, sort of thing. So that's why companies will, again, follow these rules, because we know it will stick in our brains and we will remember it and enjoy putting the logos in places to show it off. Something similar to the rule of thirds is called the Fibonacci sequence, aka the golden ratio. This might be something you may have heard in the past in your math class or something, where it looks like this weird math pattern that goes like this. So like 1 and 2, 2 and 3 is 5, 3 and 5 is 8, 8 and 5 is 13, and then 13 and 8 is 21. And it creates this pattern. And again, this is not a math class, so you're not going to be tested on things like this. But what you'll notice is that it not only applies to math, but art and science as well, because it creates this spiral flowing pattern right here. So if we start here in this bigger section, these blocks actually create this spiral, which again is visual to the eye, to guide our eye around the spiral, focusing on a center point. So again, it's often found in nature. You'll see things that follow this spiral pattern. Again, your eye is being guided by that sequence right here towards a point. You find it all over the place in plants, animals, flowers, everything like that. And we can also use it in our photographs. So it's very similar to the rule of thirds in that it guides our eye and it creates balance in the shot. So again, you can see in these examples, I am using the negative space right here, but it's guiding our eye towards the subject. So if I put the Fibonacci over it, your eye follows the empty space of this path from left to right, looking at our two newly engaged couples, and again, focusing on the center point. It allows your eye to really explore the whole photo. Same thing down here. You look at the trees and the sunset, and it guides you straight towards our subject, which are these adorable kids sitting and posing right there. So it doesn't necessarily mean when you're taking your pictures, you don't have to take a picture of something that is a spiral, but there's elements that are, again, guiding your eye from one side of the shot to the other side, and there's multiple points of interest. Very similar to the rule of thirds. You see how this is kind of in the lower third corner? They're very similar, so it's okay if they overlap a little bit. But I don't want you to think of this as you have to take a picture of something that's a spiral. So again, many characters, people, animators and things know this. Think about some of your favorite art or your favorite characters. What makes their art engaging or what makes them memorable? And it again is these rules of composition. They're following these sequences. So character, again, his head's not a spiral, but we start at the focus and then it kind of flows naturally right here. We follow the hair into the eye. Same thing with Sonic the Hedgehog here. We follow it. It's a flow. It's a natural flow. Even in artwork, it doesn't have to be a spiral, but you could see your eye kind of starts down here in this, and the shape or the position of all these characters, even the way Woody is flowing, it flows this way into this natural spiral where we focus on Buzz. It's got this curvature to it in the artwork. And again, corporations and companies are very aware of this. They make logos that easily stick in our head. I'm not even going to put the grid over this one because you can easily tell. Okay, so let's get into what you guys will be working on. So you're going to practice some of these. So if you go to the classwork tab, similar to what we've been doing before, you're going to get your cameras and your SD cards. They're set to RAW again, and you're going to capture whatever it says right here in this little box where it says capture this. So for the first one, you're going to take about 7 shots. It says capture a portrait of someone, so a portrait of a person where their subject's eye aligns on the upper third line. So I've given you kind of an example of that one. Remember the upper third, the rule of thirds, this upper third line right here, the one that would go across, that's where their eye line or their face is on that top line right there. Okay, so that's kind of an example of what I'm talking about. The next one, leading lines by a road or pathway. So again, if I go back to the presentation, showed you that. So a road, something on the ground. Look for things on the ground that are guiding the eye. You can see the railroad tracks right here. They're guiding your eye straight towards the subject. Next one, a landscape photo where the horizon is on the lower third line. Again, similar to what I just showed you. This is the lower third line. This is the lower third, and this is the upper third right here. So a landscape photo is similar to this, where your horizon point ends right about here in the lower part of the picture. Something in nature that follows the Fibonacci sequence. So that could mean, again, something natural, maybe a flower, or something that kind of flows in this spiral pattern. It doesn't mean it has to be a spiral. It just kind of flows this way. You'll notice in the image there might be something on one side of the screen, and then your eye kind of follows it towards the other side of the screen a little bit. So again, look for something in nature like a tree, flower, grass, anything that grows that kind of follows that pattern. Next is leading lines from a fence or walkway. So again, similar to this one, the fence. The fence is what guiding it. So look on the edges around campus, the walls, the fences, see what can kind of guide your eye. Place your subject in one spot and then have the walls of the fence create a line straight towards that person. This one could be a little tricky, something man-made, or man-made objects that follow the Fibonacci sequence. So again, back to the Fibonacci sequence, this one, man-made means something that's not natural, something that was created or built, like a building or a table or things of that nature. And again, it doesn't have to be a spiral, just something in the image where your eye starts focusing on something on one side of the screen and then it follows to the other side of the screen. Don't think of it always as a spiral, okay? And then the last one is 2 subjects balanced on the rule of thirds. So that was similar to this one. So this one you're going to have multiple subjects. So you need the focal points to be in these intersecting points right here. So again, the person's face or their action or their hand needs to be in more than one of these intersecting points, like here or here or here or here, something like that. Mix it up and have fun. Okay? In all of these shots, I want you guys to take your time. You guys are still experimenting and playing around with the settings. So it's okay to look around and try something, and maybe it doesn't work out on your first take. Try again. You can take lots of shots with these cameras. It's okay to really experiment and look through the viewfinder until you can see that really cool image. Okay? And similar to before, you need to upload your pictures. They're in RAW again. You need to import them into Lightroom, edit them, and then export them before you can add them to the slideshow. And one last thing that I need to mention, don't forget, always give me your exposure settings right here. Tell me your aperture, your ISO, and your shutter speed, which can be found in Adobe Bridge. And a little pro tip, you can also find this in Lightroom as well. So on the pictures, when you have a photo in Lightroom, you don't have to use Bridge. You can also use Lightroom Classic. So if I have this photo selected, as long as my mouse is not hovering over the picture, if I bring my mouse over here, you can see right here, it actually tells me the settings as well. So for this photo, the ISO is 640, the f-stop is 18, and the shutter speed is 1/800th of a second. So you can also use Lightroom Classic to answer these questions right here as well. Okay? So as always, take your time, have fun, and ask questions, and I can't wait to see what you create.